And that's why I'm glad the test is not tomorrow, because otherwise I would be frantic. Because this one, I don't feel like I can pass the test tomorrow. Without.
Project manager for the company, new change request has been approved for your project. This change request, however, has introduced several new risks in the project. We have communicated these risks and the project stakeholders understand possible effects.
I'm going to say risk register because it's the only thing we've talked about before.
To create a mitigation response for the different risk events. Where we record the mitigation response.
I'm
So what's the
assuming,
difference between the risk log and the risk register?
to me, there isn't. It's just a matter they threw in a bogus term. But I don't know that for a fact. But risk register is what's in the previous question. It's not risk log.
Right.
But I'm thinking the new risks go into the risk register, so I wonder if the mitigations for those risks would go there too.
Well, the risk goes into the risk register. The mitigation goes where?
New risks
Does it go into the risk register?
and then mitigation.
Or the risk log?
That's what we said. Well, we were trying to figure out, is there such a thing as a risk
Risk
log
log?
as opposed to risk register?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
See
That's
how-
what we were.
See how quickly I did that?
Yeah. That's what we were talking about.
And I actually took the long way. I actually could have did that in almost half the time if I would have read the answers first and then went to the summary. Because it just says, where would you record the mitigation response? Back up one more sentence. You elect to create a mitigation response for the identified risk events. That tells you what you're doing. And then
So-
where would you do that? Risk register.
Well, I
So
knew
there
that
is
the,
no risk log.
I
It's
don't
called
think
the
so.
risk register.
Yeah, what's a
Okay.
it
risk
just
log?
says it's not a valid
What's
choice.
it, A?
Right.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
Yeah, I
And
knew
that's-
that the
that's what
new
you
risks
said.
would be put in the risk register. I just didn't know if mitigations for those would be.
No, academically it's called risk register. Professionally, somebody may say good log that.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're really just shortening the
Yeah,
professional
but-
lingo versus the academic.
But it's referred to as risk register.
Formally
got
risk
that.
register.
Okay.
Yeah, but Tina was saying, the
Go ahead.
risk-
I knew the risk went in the register. I just didn't know
Right.
the mitigations.
Right, the mitigation.
No.
And project management plan just didn't sound right at all.
Yeah.
No, it's.
Yeah.
I want to know all of my problems. You tell me all of my problems. So as you start going around and finding the problems, you start documenting them. That's
That's
your
the
risk
risk register.
register.
Right.
Then you come to me and basically say, here's the risk, and I agree or disagree with them, or accept or reject them, and then we go into the risk management plan of how do we reduce the risk. But the risk register captures it. The risk management plan is the reduction plan, basically, or insurance, or avoid, or accept or reject. And the project management plan has nothing to do with this question. So if you want to follow my rules, now that I see the pattern, risk, that's the oddball, absolute wrong answer, and then you risk register, log versus plan. This is also a bogus answer out of the remaining two, so you're really left with the D and B here, risk management plan or risk register, but it's specifically saying where we record those, the word record those. Now what are you going to do with them? Just record them.
Well, actually, I'm glad to see this question because it does say the risk management plan is an input to the risk response plan.
Say it again?
The
Where?
risk management plan is an input to the risk response plan. Even though it's not right for this answer, but that's,
Well, the risk management plan, all that says is, hey, we're going to find risk. You could just do the risk management framework that, even though it's in this document, it's standard and guideline based, you could take that and basically come up with very, very simple to have a risk management plan.
right.
Then Well, what are you going to do with that? You're going to have to respond to the risk, and then
Right.
that would one
And that
leads to
goes
the
into
other.
the plan, whereas all the risk is just listed.
Right.
The mitigation
Right. Exactly.
is listed. Yeah.
Good job. You guys are starting to pick these up relatively quickly. That thing hates me.
Well, I was gonna say acceptance, but I'm not sure
Nah.
passive versus active, because none of you
Well,
know about it.
you know about it, so it's probably active.
Okay.
I didn't even read this question. I read this and then I went back a sentence. One saying stakeholders acknowledge the risk, so that's people know. That's why I think it's active. The risk is not likely to happen, so you accept it. You're still moving forward. You know about it. It's not likely. You still move on.
And
That's
you may have covered this,
acceptance.
and I've gone brain dead. Difference between active acceptance and passive acceptance.
Yeah.
Well, apparently I don't know.
Oh, okay.
was just
This
about
is
to
a
ask the
strategy
same
in which
question.
no plans are made to try to avoid the risk. Active acceptance. Such response include developing a contingency. Okay. Okay. Well, we had it down between A and D because, hey, the stakeholders know about it, the project manager knows about it. I'm assuming Sam's the project manager. Project manager knows about it, and you're still deciding to move on.
Well, to me, they're still clear as mud, because if you read where it says such responses include developing contingency reserves to deal with the risk in case they occur. But D says the same thing. Active acceptance establishes a contingency reserve.
Which means the way that I explain active and passive with ethical hacking is active means you reach out and touch something or you do something, and then passive means that you don't take any action. In this case, they acknowledged it and moved on, so that's passive. They know about it, but you didn't take any action. Active meaning you still take some action. So they refer to as action.
I'm sorry, I misread it. Yeah, it does say, okay, never mind.
Includes
So that's
actually
why it's
doing
restated in D. Okay.
anything. I mean,
Right,
literally,
okay.
you could say
They
we're going to go on
needed that
vacation
sense
as a
out of it.
result,
Okay.
and that would be different. So, so in this case, I picked D because, well, it sounded like a good answer. But you do have the different types, and so even I got it down to a 50-50 extremely quickly, but this is where my rules backfired because to be quite honest, I do this day in and day out, and I get lazy with this, so I don't really think about it, nor do I memorize these questions. So in this case, my testing rules backfired because I was lazy about it.
I guess what could lead you from active to passive then is where they say not likely to happen. So it's like, well, I'm not going to do anything because they use the term not likely to happen.
Yeah, and well, not likely to happen. No, not likely to happen is it's impact times probability. Probability is low in this case.
Mm-hmm.
It's not likely to happen. But it's a hurricane, so the impact could be high. The sky could fall, it's just not likely. The impact if the moon crashes into Earth, the impact would be very, very high. Extremely rare, not going to happen. So basically what the project manager is saying here is, we don't need to do anything. As opposed to, well, let's plan for the Earth hitting the moon. Well, let's come up with something else. Let's do something. Active means to do something, and passive means to not do anything. It's slightly different variants of what I teach in ethical hacking, and if I had thought about it long enough, probably could have knocked this one out of the park, but nonetheless, it's not how many we get right or wrong. Those are academic rules. It's what we learn from the process, and those are our professional rules. So I can get them all wrong. If I learn from every answer, then it's still valid. What type of response strategy in this? I don't know. Back up a paragraph, a sentence. Company can guarantee the orders within 3 days, but the cost of the projects are significantly more expensive than the current vendor. Probably not enough. Okay, so they go with one vendor. If they can't do it in 10 days, then we're going to have another vendor who can guarantee in less than 3 days. And so that will, what type of judgment would that be, or strategy would that be?
A.
You can also do it this way. Internal and external, that relates those as opposites. Even though a risk response and the risk management strategy is the big picture, responses are the specific ones. Expert judgment, unless you want to give Mary, a gold star for today, that doesn't matter. But your contingency planning, because somebody else can guarantee that it happens in 3 days, that's the contingency. Or a compensating control, have a backup vendor. Right? Agree? Disagree?
Agree.
And so the answer here should be alpha. And with confidence, we would have, on my tracking sheet, I would have put 100% confidence, and I would have moved on. Final answer, Don. Did you get it? Well, I knew these were all types, so all I had to do was find a keyword. I went here, basically it said, what type? Okay, great. Went back sentence, you decided to hire a local expert team. So if I can't do it myself and I hire somebody else, that's transference. Done. I read, unfortunately I actually did read the last 2 sentences. I should, now that I understand the pattern of this, I'm going to stop probably reading this last sentence and just focus on the second to last sentence, and I can speed up my test taking even more now that I'm realizing I'm reading 2 sentences instead of 1. So literally, I'm processing this question by reading my answers, finding the second to last sentence. That's really the meat of it. I go right there, and I figure out which one's which, and then with confidence we can say transference. How cool is that? Right? Now you gotta remember, I get some wrong, right? Every now and then, I do not memorize these questions. I promise you I don't. No desire to do that. So on some of them, you'll notice, bam, answer, 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 answer. Then, because I'm doing it so fast, then I screw up because I'm not really paying that much attention. But I'm still averaging in the 80s and 90s because I'm processing efficiently. Now, if this were the real exam, what I would end up doing is I probably would go back through and double check all of the 25s and 50% confidences, just to give myself a little bit more confidence, and then kind of move those less confident ones probably into the confidence pile and spend more time on just the ones that I didn't process quickly. And that's, I know that, and I know I can do that because I've done this more than once. But it's still a very, very efficient and very, very high accurate way of taking tests, despite some of the goof-ups. Plus, I kind of like making mistakes. I like to show you that I made a mistake, and this is how I made the mistake. This is too short to really do any tricks. Implementing risk response. Final answer? You guys reading, I warned you about that. What is it, monitor? Monitor? Bravo?
Well, see, to me, monitor and control comes after the implementing. So I didn't go to monitoring.
Residual risk is the risk that is left over after you implement a countermeasure or control. Rinse and repeat states you identify new risks.
And same thing with effectiveness, right?
These are types of identification, so I group A and C together.
And D would be what you do before you do all the rest of this.
And the effectiveness of that.
Okay.
Greg says, bravo, and you say, I like it. There were enough clues. So basically, if you take these clues here and put them into the life cycle, you'll start eliminating that. Quantitative and qualitative are types of identification, which is early in the life cycle. Monitoring is in the middle of the life cycle. And then identify new risk could even come after that as the assessment comes, or even in the early stages of implementation. So identify risks. The delta here is all over the map. It can happen in multiple, at any point in time you can identify new risk. So basically I throw A and C out. I didn't like D, I left myself with B. I double checked each one of those. This is an example of, here let me give you another testing example. Monitor and control risks. Oh, let me get the right verbiage. Monitoring and controlling risk is a process that describes tracking identified risks. Monitoring and controlling risk is described as monitoring residual risk. Performing qualitative analysis is a process that describes, etc., etc., and you rinse and you repeat that until one of them you get a warm and fuzzy on, and that's the insert the answer into the question. So and you can also do it as a double check too. So right away, if I would have done another testing rule and I went with Bravo here, which of the following processes described in the statement below? Okay, well I found the answer. Monitoring and control risk are a process that defines tracking risks, monitoring risk, identifying new risks, and evaluating risk process effectively. Did you get a nice warm and fuzzy with that? That gives you the confidence, 100% confidence on your tracking sheet. Next answer. It's that simple. What's Wibbits?
Work breakdown structure.
Yeah, 5.
My 1 PMP class.
Now what is it? Now what does it include?
I'm going to say C.
And how's that different than A?
Well, it couldn't have been omitted during the WBS creation because you...
No, that's Bravo, Alpha.
Oh, alpha, okay.
How's A different than C?
Well, I don't like the word activities in A.
How's A different from C?
Mm-hmm. This is kind of a contractor question. I, as a subcontractor, would come to you and say, I found a whole bunch of problems. I'd like to get your permission to bill you additional, what they call cost plus work, right? Cost, which is fixed cost, or cost plus, which meaning anything else we'll just pay you for. So typically new work generated by the risk plans, that would come under another billing code because it's additional work generated. Versus A, which is because the risk response are now activities. Yes, you might find new activities to do and you might have to update the breakdown structure. So one is typically new work. At least that's how the relation I'm making with my contractor experience. Yeah, I don't like the word omitted in Bravo, so nice point for that one. Final answer?
I'm gonna stick with C.
Yeah, because not all risk could be activities.
Omitted generally is purposefully done. So why did you omit it? Which, from a security point of view, we call that data diddling. When you enter something into a program and you specifically omit something, because you have data to keep it integrity from paper to technical. If you omitted something, that's called data diddling. Or you could not only be in the input, but also the output. If I run a report in this, here I'll give you a great example. Government employees have done this before. Not a government employee, but I mean any employee. You get a receipt at a restaurant and you have liquor at the bottom. You fold your receipt like this
And
scan it in and copy it. That's data diddling. You've hidden the liquor on the bill.
Error of omission.
Error of omission, right?
Now wait, let's talk about something.
Okay, go ahead. Let's talk about it all you want, my friend.
A, because of the risk responses that are now activities, that would be a reason to update.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it that you have to document the new work
Because
and then
new
determine
work
the
generated
activities.
yeah. Well, I guess the responses don't have to be activities. Okay, so,
I mean, I don't know what the answer is.
yeah.
Good job.
Let's see
Like
what
you
it
said,
says
the
about A.
brainstorm that thing.
Oh, they're added to the risk register. Okay.
Yeah.
One is a risk. One is a project management term.
Right. The key is updating the WBS.
Right.
Because even though they don't say it, not all risks is necessarily going to create additional work. You're going to update the WBS.
So this swaps the term out. Activities and risk responses. Whether this is completely risk orientated, this is risk and project management oriented. That's what I mean. You got to pay attention to these words, and what you're getting a really good exposure here because I'm actually taking this test with you, and I can point them all out and go, okay, well, that actually where that wording comes from this document, this wording comes from that document, and if you literally were to just not even pay attention to this class and go home and take these questions, you wouldn't nearly tune into those keywords like I'm showing you. And you may not be able to appreciate this now, but when you get your pass, because you know exactly where to look on this test and for what words to look in for, there's a lot of value to that. And so I hope you guys appreciate it. Because we don't always have the luxury to do these test questions. If this is a class of 12 people and I had to answer questions all day long, we wouldn't be doing test questions.
Right.
So we're actually getting through all the material and doing test questions and still getting in a little early. Last one. Got it?
Bless you.
Bless you. And you probably could get this from just the answers. Does risk responses have to deal with the governance of the organization?
No.
No. So Bravo's out.
I think D is out as well.
Yeah, history. Well, history tells us, I mean, it's nice, you can use it for trend of analysis, but we're in the present. How do you respond in the present? I mean, if you had something previously documented from history, I mean, maybe, but you're really stretching it. So we got Bravo and Delta that's out.
I would say C only because that
Nice.
matches my personality, because I think things need to be
Personal,
precise
right.
and exact.
Or, you know, if it has a high priority, we'll give more detail, but if it has a low priority, we'll give less detail. Nah, that doesn't make any sense. You give the most detail you can every time, all the time, for documentation purposes. And of course, I'm a moron for that, but okay, let's find out why.
That is so not said.
The risk register is not a detailed definition of the risk response. but the level of data should correspond. What? You know what? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's where they're getting at. I can explain to you their justification.
Well, I can once I read their reason for C not being the right answer, and no.
Well, I didn't read that.
It says some have low impact and low probability, so it doesn't need to be as
I should have got this
detailed.
too. From an incident response point of view, basically I spend all my time fighting the fire of high risk. For the low stuff, that it basically is ongoing occurrence, and basically has no impact, then basically I'm not going to spend the time and document all that stuff out because it's probably not going to happen, and if it does, it's going to impact us with zero, so why waste your time on the detail? You can just summarize that stuff as, yes, it's an occurrence. But if something that has a high impact or a high occurrence, well, we need to get to the bottom of this from an incident response. I still like C though.
Well, I C leads into my mentality of prepare for the worst, hope for the best,
and
also
my
my analness about detail and thoroughness is that if I have it all written out and I never need it, no harm, no foul. So.
But unfortunately, they don't tie cost into this.
No. Or time.
Well, because also to play my own devil's advocate here, you run everything to ground, okay? You don't know it's low until you basically researched it. And that was kind of what the professional instinct that was mentored into me was, you think it's low, why? You got to prove it's low.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically you have to go through the same process, whether it's low, medium, or high, and then ultimately you have your ranking. So from an incident response point of view, or even a forensic point of view, when they say comb the desert, you comb the whole desert, and then you determine if it's low, medium, or high.
So that way you already have the information, why not put it in there?
Exactly. And that's my professional, you know, on-the-job lessons they're talking, but what they don't specify here is, okay, that's great and all, it's not cost effective. And so this is more project oriented and risk, definitely project team oriented. And so if I'm going to spend a little time researching low error rates, I have to bill for that, and therefore it's not cost effective. So don't worry about the detail that's not going to happen, let's just worry about that. So there's multiple points to view into this one. I can tell you why C is correct, but I also understand the justification for A. Alright, let's see what we got. 70%. So even though we goofed up a bunch, right, it still would have been passing. Yesterday we did better. So using the rules, I'm still at 70% even though I'm goofing up. But I'm goofing up because, you know, I'm taking shortcuts and things like that, and I'm thinking things are the way through. I'd rather have you goof up because of those reasons than bad test-taking techniques where even though you're smart enough and you know it, you're selecting the wrong answer because you're not tuning into the right words. That's a bad reason to get something wrong. Yeah. Here, I'm still have the confidence, I'm goofing up and I'm getting wrong answers, but for dumb reasons. If I take my time a little bit more in a real exam, I'd probably get that in the 90s, as opposed to the 40s, the 60s, because I had bad test-taking skills. I want you guys to have good test-taking skills because ultimately it gets to a point, like literally, where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to take another exam today and just go take it, no study. I have the confidence to know that I absolutely get this stuff correct.
Did you have the light on yesterday or off when you did this up?
Oh, probably with the both. I can, it's up to you, I can leave it on or leave it off. Alright.
I like it off with it.
Yeah, that's what I was
Alright, I have no preference, I'm
having focus problems.
No, I mean, look.
My eyes are going to get as tired.
If you want them off, we'll turn them off. Alright, one last thing for today. I want to make this the best class that I possibly can for you guys, and while I personally enjoyed our tangents, that's not in the scope of this class. So,
that should be another class.
I mean, will be soon. So, is there anything good we can add to the good list? Test questions?
More test questions, yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I like test questions.
The only thing, and I appreciate the test questions as far as honing the process and the way of analyzing. for me,
Mm-hmm.
would like to see test questions that are more cap related, because not only can I then gauge my ability to decipher and dissect the information, but it would, for me, would give me a gauge of where my strengths and weaknesses are on the course itself.
Yeah.
Fine. Did that make any sense?
Well, what I can do is I can get the ISC squared.
And I understand that product may not even be out there.
No, it is.
Okay.
You can get the ISC squared, or I'll get it for you.
Because then, if we had gotten